Take control of your tax matters this filing season and ensure you're compliant to help strengthen our country. Tax Matters, in association with the South African Revenue Service.
You don't want the taxman knocking on your door. Over the last few years, the South African Revenue Service has developed mechanisms to make sure that taxpayers remain tax compliant and avoid incurring administrative penalties. Frans, thank you very much for joining us. Let's start by talking about exactly what administrative penalties are.
Administrative penalties are penalties that are imposed for non-compliance with the tax laws. And as the name suggests, it's around the administrative non-compliance. There are two kinds of administrative penalties. There's the so-called fixed amount penalty, and then there is the percentage-based penalty. And fixed amount penalties are imposed where, for example, you put your tax return in late, and that is an amount that is imposed once a month, and if the non-compliance isn't rectified, it increases each month up to a maximum of either 3 or 4 years, depending on the circumstances. A percentage-based penalty is, as the name suggests, a percentage of the tax that hasn't been paid, and so that arises in somewhere like a value-added tax where you don't pay the right amount of tax on time, so you're late. And then there's a 10% penalty for being late.
Now, SARS can be patient with taxpayers. So at what point are those penalties then imposed on a taxpayer?
So generally speaking, they're imposed once you have passed the relevant deadline in those two cases. If you look at, say, your personal filing, the filing season will close on a specified date. We will communicate that quite broadly. And if you then file your return after that date, the administrative penalty would be imposed. And if you continue not filing it, it'll increase.
Speak to us, or break down rather, the different penalties that can be imposed, and do they include jail time at all?
We need to draw a distinction between administrative penalties, which is what we've been talking about up to now. Then we have what's known as an understatement penalty. So let's assume you didn't declare something in your tax return. Then depending on why you didn't declare it, so it's behavior based, there'd be a penalty for that behavior. And then finally, and this is for the more serious issues, you could have a criminal offence, which is where the fines come in and potentially jail time. A criminal penalty, there are the so-called lesser offences, which are up to 2 years and in jail, a fine up to 2 years in jail, and then the sort of more fraud-related offences, which would carry, if convicted, a sentence of up to 5 years.
Are there systems that SARS uses to alert a taxpayer that they are facing administrative or other penalties, and does it give them a sense of what steps to take thereafter?
SARS tries to communicate with taxpayers so that they're clear about what the deadlines are, and I think filing season is probably one of the best examples where we go out, we market it, we let people know, we send them reminders essentially by way of media, because there's so many taxpayers. Once the penalty's been imposed, we raise a penalty assessment, and then that would tell you what your next steps are.
In the instance that a taxpayer is unable to pay the penalties or to fulfill whatever penalty SARS has slapped on them, are there mechanisms that are put in place for SARS to assist the taxpayer, as in payment plans or the like?
Again, we need to draw the distinction between the penalties SARS administers and those the criminal justice system administers. So criminal justice, that has its own processes. The ones that SARS imposes, yes, because the penalty is a tax debt, just like any other tax debt, all the relief mechanisms that are available for tax debt are available in the case of a penalty. So potentially you could ask for a payment plan. You could, if you were in severe financial difficulties, ask us to waive or compromise part of the penalty.
Thank you very much for joining us. Late submission of tax returns, late payment of taxes, and the understatement of tax liability. These are some of the things that not only delay the tax collection process, but they could also leave you out of pocket as you'll fulfill the administrative penalties imposed on you. So, keep it simple and ensure that the country has sufficient resources to deliver your needs by meeting your various tax obligations on time.
Managing your tax submissions has never been easier. SARS is here to help you be tax compliant. Tax Matters, in association with the South African Revenue Service.